99.9% of the musicians sat in their room, picked a hero, and emulated it.
Joni Mitchell is not, and never has been, an artist interested in playing nice. For decades, she has captivated audiences with her hauntingly beautiful music, an evocative soundscape of vulnerability, intelligence, and raw emotion. Her lyrics are poetry in motion, her melodies the kind of tunes you can lose yourself in for hours, like sunlight filtering through stained glass.
Took a look at his license plate and it said, just died.
But Mitchell is also a contradiction, a woman capable of penning some of the gentlest, most soul-stirring songs ever written, who also wields her tongue like a dagger when the mood strikes. If you're a musician who's crossed her, or simply failed to meet her exacting standards, there's every chance you felt the sting of her words. And Mitchell does not hold back, whether she's dissecting a fellow artist's talent, ethics, or even breath. Her list of public grievances with other artists is almost as long as her list of accolades.
This guy's a moron, you know, and I said, and then I got philosophical. Philosophical? I said, yes, philosophical, you know. I said, you do know what philosophy is, don't you?
And yet, you can't help but admire the boldness of it all. Mitchell is not one for platitudes or performative respect. She's a truth-teller, her truth at least, and has never shied away from making her opinions known, no matter how much backlash they might generate. If the music world operates on a system of unspoken rules of decorum, Mitchell has gleefully burned the manual. For better or worse, she calls it as she sees it, leaving a trail of bruised egos and headline-worthy quotes in her wake. There's no safety net, no softening of the blow. You can almost picture her perched somewhere, acoustic guitar in hand, serenely unconcerned by the chaos her words have unleashed. Let's start with Bob Dylan, a name that inevitably looms large in any discussion of Joni Mitchell. Dylan, the troubadour laureate of American folk, and Mitchell, the queen of introspective songwriting, seem like natural kindred spirits. For a time they were. Mitchell has openly credited Dylan's Positively 4th Street as a turning point in her artistic journey, saying it made her realize she could write about anything.
Of every man but you.
But the admiration didn't last. At some point in the 1970s, their relationship curdled, and Mitchell's assessment of Dylan grew increasingly scathing over the years.
Like a lot of Bob's songs. Musically, he's not very gifted. You know, he's borrowed his voice from old hillbillies. He's got a lot of borrowed things. He's not a great guitar player. You know, he's invented a character to deliver his songs.
"We are like night and day, Dylan and I," she said, dismissing him with an almost casual brutality. Bob is not authentic at all. He's a plagiarist, and his name and voice are fake. Everything about Bob is a deception. It's the kind of remark that makes you do a double take, not least because of its sheer audacity. Calling Bob Dylan, the Nobel Prize-winning poet of rock, a fraud is like calling the Mona Lisa a doodle. It's a heretical opinion, to say the least. But Mitchell doubled down, as she always does. In 2013, she elaborated further. Musically, Dylan's not very gifted. He's borrowed his voice from old hillbillies. He's got a lot of borrowed things. He's not a great guitar player. He's invented a character to deliver his songs. It's a mask of sorts. And, in a final flourish of venom, she added, "I hated sharing a microphone with him because he had rotten breath." Now, to be fair, Mitchell has a point about Dylan's theatricality. He's always been a shapeshifter, adopting personas and playing with identity throughout his career. But there's a kind of irony in Mitchell's critique, given that she herself adopted a stage name. Her birth name is Roberta Joan Anderson. Still, hypocrisy is not something Mitchell has ever been overly concerned about. She is, at her core, an artist driven by instinct, and if that instinct tells her Dylan is a charlatan, then she'll shout it from the rooftops, Nobel Prize or not. If Dylan is the most famous name on Mitchell's list of grievances, Judy Collins is perhaps the most surprising. Collins, a fellow folk icon, helped introduce Mitchell's songwriting to a wider audience when she recorded Both Sides Now in 1967. The song became a massive hit, reaching number 3 on the US charts and cementing Mitchell's reputation as a formidable songwriter. You'd think Mitchell would be grateful for the exposure, but her feelings about Collins' rendition are, let's say, complicated. Collins, for her part, has never been shy about addressing the tension. I remember hearing something about Joni not liking my version of the song, but I couldn't care less, she said with a shrug, as though swatting away a minor annoyance.
The first time that I heard the song, I was in bed. It was 3:00 in the morning. I was absolutely slam dunk drunk, I can tell you that. So he put Joni Mitchell on the phone and woke me up at 3 in the morning, and she sang me Both Sides Now.
But Mitchell's reported disdain for Collins' version of Both Sides Now seems to stem less from the interpretation itself and more from the success it garnered. For a time, some listeners even believed Collins had written the song, an oversight that must have rankled Mitchell to no end.
Oh my God, the new Joni Mitchell CD, Both Sides Now. This friend of mine said, "Oh, Judy Collins, let her sing her song."
True, I got that a lot. How did you get Judy to give you permission to sing your song?
I think she's a little jealous, Collins speculated. But with her history of being this brilliant songwriter, she has no right to actually feel that way. She should just be saying, thank you, God." The clash between Mitchell and Collins speaks to a deeper issue, the tension between artistic purity and commercial success. Mitchell has always been fiercely protective of her work, to the point of alienating those who've helped bring it to a larger audience. For her, the idea of someone else reaping the rewards of her creativity, whether financial or reputational, is anathema. It's a mindset that has made her a singular figure in the music world, but also a difficult one. And then we have John Lennon, another titan of 20th century music who found himself in Mitchell's crosshairs. Their meeting during Lennon's infamous Lost Weekend in Los Angeles was reportedly frosty from the start. "When I met John Lennon, it was during his lost year in LA, you know," Mitchell recalled, with the kind of knowing tone that suggests she was less than impressed. That's a class difficulty he had. He's a working class lad.
I mean, when I met John Lennon, it was during his last year in LA, and he came up to me and he said, "Oh, it's all a product of our education. You want a hit, don't you?" I was cutting Court and Spark. He was cutting across the hall. So I played him something from Court and Spark, and he said, "You want a hit, don't you? Put some fiddles on it. Why do you always let other people have your hits for you, you know?"
For Mitchell, Lennon's behavior was emblematic of a broader fear working class people have of middle class people, a point she made with her usual lack of subtlety. It's not exactly a flattering portrayal of the Beatles' legend, and one suspects Lennon would have had a few choice words of his own if he were alive to hear it. But perhaps the most searing critique Mitchell has ever delivered was aimed at Madonna, the queen of reinvention, and a lightning rod for controversy in her own right. Mitchell's disdain for Madonna is rooted in what she sees as the commodification of music and culture. Music has become burlesque over the last few years. Video's done that. Every generation has to be more shocking than the last, she said, with a sigh of exasperation. But she didn't stop there. She's got that whore Madonna thing built in. She's like a living Barbie doll, but a little bit on the blue side. There's always been that type of female. There's always been a market for it. But the danger is that she thinks she's a role model. And it's a terrible role model. It's death to all things real.
To always be lumped in with the girls, and sometimes unfavorably, as if they beat me at my own game.
It's a blistering takedown, one that leaves no room for nuance or counter-argument. For Mitchell, Madonna represents everything wrong with modern music. Its superficiality, its obsession with image, its relentless pursuit of attention at the expense of substance. And while Madonna might argue that her provocative persona is itself a form of art, Mitchell is having none of it. For her, art is about authenticity, and anything less is unworthy of respect. Even Taylor Swift, a self-proclaimed Mitchell devotee, hasn't entirely escaped her ire. Swift has often cited Mitchell as a major influence, and her music bears traces of Mitchell's introspective style.
Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. They pave paradise, put up a parking lot.
But the admiration doesn't seem to be mutual. I've seen her. Physically, she looks similarly small-hipped and high cheekbones, Mitchell remarked, with the kind of faint praise that feels more like a backhanded compliment. As for Swift's music, I don't know what her music sounds like, but I do know this, that if she's going to sing and play me, good luck. It's a stinging remark, made all the more cutting by Mitchell's apparent disinterest in Swift's work. But here's the thing about Joni Mitchell. For all her sharp edges and unfiltered opinions, there's an integrity to her that's impossible to ignore. She doesn't criticize for the sake of it, nor does she seem particularly interested in scoring points or seeking validation. Her critiques are rooted in her own, deeply held beliefs about art, culture, and what it means to be authentic.
Generally, within the industry, I've been undervalued. I've been likened to things which weren't really like me at all.
She's a purist, and while that purity has undoubtedly alienated some of her peers, it's also what makes her one of the most compelling figures in music history. Joni Mitchell is not here to make friends, and thank God for that. In an industry increasingly dominated by platitudes and PR spin, her candor is a breath of fresh air, even if it sometimes smells faintly of scorched earth. Whether you agree with her or not, there's no denying that she's one of a kind, an artist whose brilliance is matched only by her willingness to speak her mind. Consequences be damned. And really, isn't that what we want from our icons? To be fearless, flawed, and unapologetically themselves? Mitchell may not suffer fools gladly, but she's earned the right not to.